And there's so many people out there today who are searching. There's millions of people who woke up during the nightmare of COVID. They woke up from the complacency and they realized the evil. And we saw that. Let's go now into the contemporary events, talk a little about it. We saw the kind of evil on display, not just with the shooter or shooters, depending on who you're listening to online, not just with the hatred of the politicians and, the rhetoric that riles people up and makes them capable or encourages them to become killers. That's actually, I think, almost a lower level of evil. The real evil is the deception. The real evil is the lying and the hypocrisy and the deep deception behind the scenes, which it's really hard not to understand, even if you don't have the receipts. You can certainly see spiritually that there is lots of deception and lots of lying going on all across the political and social world right now, at least in the United States of America, but all over the world, and so there is very felt the spirit of Python in the world today. What is the spirit of Python? Talked about this a little bit. You can find this in the Acts of the Apostles when you go to the Apostle Paul, who is preaching and teaching in Philippi, which we've been where he's walked his footsteps there in northern Greece, where he taught and brought many to the faith, including the first European, Lydia, Saint Lydia, who is glorified in the Orthodox Church. We've been to where she was baptized by the Apostle Paul. So we know, as people who lived 20 years in northern Greece, we know intimately this story, and it's extremely important for us to understand today because that spirit is in the world so strong today. What is the spirit of Python? Well, it says right there in the Acts of the Apostles, the Apostle Paul had this young woman who was possessed and was being used. She had handlers who were using her for money, to get money, because she was possessed. And she was saying, like an oracle, the things people were coming and wanted to know the future, wanted to know what their fate was going to be and all the rest. So now she's going behind Paul and screaming that he is a man of God, that he is sent by God, and that people ought to listen to him. And it's very strange because, of course, she is possessed by the spirit that is contrary to the apostle. And so what's going on? Why is she saying the truth? Right? She's obviously saying the truth on one level. Let's go actually and read the scriptural passage right now. I'm going to bring it up here. And I want to talk about this. I want to be able to give you some help, as much as I can, to interpreting the events of the day. And I think this is key. So let's look at Acts 16:16. If you want to open up your scripture. Acts 16:16. Let's go to the whole chapter. Let's start right where he comes in to seize the vision, the famous vision, right? Go over to Macedonia. Macedonia, of course, is contemporary northern Greece. That's Macedonia. That's the area with Thessaloniki and from Kavala, modern Kavala, over to the other side on the borders of Albania, today's contemporary Albania. That's Macedonia. So he goes there, and he comes from Neapolis to Philippi. It says here. Let's open this up a little bit so we can see it. Did I share it? I haven't shared it yet. I got to share it. That'll help. Let me share it so everybody can see. All right. So he comes up right here. Chief city of that part of Macedonia, and a colony. And we're in that city abiding certain days. And on the Sabbath, we went out of the city by a riverside where prayer was wont to be made, and sat down and spake unto the woman which resorted thither, the women who resorted thither. And of course, Lydia, certain woman named Lydia, a seller of purple in the city of Thyatira, worship God, heard us. Thyatira, of course, was in Asia Minor, right? Whose heart of the Lord opened, and she attended unto the things which were spoken of Paul. And when she was baptized and her household, she besought us, saying, if ye have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come into my house and abide there. So she constrained us to abide. Now here's where we enters the spirit of Python. And it came to pass as we went to prayer, a certain damsel possessed with the spirit of divinization met us, which brought her masters much gain by soothsaying. Actually, the spirit of divination in Greek is pneuma pythonos. Let's find the Greek version here so we can show you, so nobody's thinking that I'm making this up. Let's find the Greek, and we have a text analysis right here. So they took him to the marketplace and to the rulers. These men, being Jews, do exceedingly trouble our city and teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither to observe, being Romans. All right, so the rest of the story is not as important. What we want to focus on is right here in 16 and 17. Now let's look at 16 in the Greek a minute. This is a literal, of course, translation, so it's not going to read well. Of us to the place of prayer, a girl certain having a spirit of Python met us, who gain much was bringing the master. So they translated in the King James, or that version of King James. I think it was, is this a New King James or was this King James? I think it was King James. In any case, they translated divinization instead of Python. It says right here, pneuma pythona. Pneuma pythona, spirit of Python. So what is the spirit of Python? Well, in short, the spirit of Python, I didn't bring that up today. So let me just show you the Greek here, right here in the middle. Spirit of Python, and this is here, pneuma pythona, right? Pythona, capital P, and that's referring to the ancient oracles, where they would go and they would try to know the future, what's going to happen in the war, what's going to happen in the battle, and often they would say some kind of rhyme, some kind of interesting expression that could be read this way and that way. There wasn't clarity. There wasn't truth, the spirit of truth animating them. But they produced it in such a way that they were going to be right no matter what happened. In any case, here we see that the demons were speaking the truth for the sake of falsehood. That's the essence of what we need to know with regard to the spirit of the world today. You have those who are essentially possessed by the passions, or even by demons or Satanists or whatever it might be, on the whole spectrum. There's a spectrum of demonic delusion and possession, demonic subjugation to the demons and the passions, and then the demons behind the passions, right? So those who live for their passions, live for greed, for pride, for lust, for whatever it is that dominates them, that they don't have the fear of God, they don't have the fear of, that they're going to die and they're going to face a judgment. None of that is in their horizons. They live only to obtain temporal gains, whether it be pleasure, through passions, whatever it might be. A lot of this is about control. It's about greed, but not just for money, but for control, and therefore power, and therefore a godlike existence on this earth. That's really a lot of what this modern idolatry is that we see. And we have to get beyond the rhetoric and beyond the forms of these politicians and these leaders today and get behind it and ask hard questions, deep questions. What are they serving? Who are they serving? What are they about? Now, there's going to be a mix, right? It's not going to be clear at all. You're not going to just get, okay, this person is all evil, this person's all good, obviously. There's going to be a whole mixture of good and bad. There's going to be good positions, bad positions. There's going to be, and that is essentially the milieu of this spirit of Python, right? Where there's not clarity as to the truth, and the truth is often spoken when it's advantageous and not when it's not advantageous. In other words, when it's painful, when you suffer, the truth is hidden, the truth is lost, the truth is forgotten. And so that's a minority. The majority is when the truth is easy and we gain from it, then we speak the truth. But also, more importantly, they are ultimately about their own control and gains, and therefore they're not praising God because of God per se. They're not praising the truth and the virtues because they truly are interested in the truth and the virtues, but in order to therefore bring the unsuspected masses to follow them and for them to be subjugated to them. All right. So it's about control ultimately. And that's what the demon-possessed girl was about. Paul would have left eventually the city of Philippi. And what would have remained? This demon-possessed girl would have been associated with Paul. And therefore, people would have thought, well, she spoke the truth. And he, as a servant of the truth, maybe they are both expressing the truth. And maybe they would have been brought then to destruction, spiritual catastrophe after the departure of Paul. The church would not have stood the test of time there with such confusion. And this is what we see in the world today because of one of the reasons is the plethora of Christianities. So much confusion, so many lies about the person of Christ, about the body of Christ, about the truth of the church, about the truth of church history, and all the many other things that we can't get into right now. So when we look at the things going on in politics, first of all, I think we need to be resolved that we're never going to really understand entirely. We shouldn't run after every explanation and try to say, well, that's it. That's what happened. There were 2 shooters. There were 1 shooter. There was this. There was that. This person is a hero. This person is a villain. I think that we should probably be quite reticent to try to come to hard, fast conclusions, but we should look for methodology. We should always be mindful of the methodology, not so much enamored with the rhetoric or what they're saying. Many times they speak a good game before election or before a tough crossroads, and they have a totally different agenda. So you have to be very reticent to run after and understand and get excited about the rhetoric, but actually think about the methodology and then, of course, the on the ground concrete results that come from it. Because I'll just give you one example of recent political history. I remember my good friend Konstantin Zalalis told me now, how many years ago now? 16 years ago, when Barack Obama came to power in the United States. I was not in the United States. I was in Greece at the time, and I was speaking to him, and he said, Father Peter, I think he was saying this publicly as well. It's kind of resembles or reminds one of what a demagogue, not unlike what we understand the rise of the Antichrist to be, how he came to power. Now, he's not the Antichrist, neither is Trump. People say maybe Trump's the Antichrist. Now, all this is superficial reading. It's not. Don't get swept away in any of that kind of speculation. It's not the case right now. Is the spirit of secularism, which is the spirit of Antichrist, very, very felt and present in American society and Western society? Absolutely. It's all over the place. Doesn't make, therefore, the political leader of the day into the Antichrist. Okay, so, but getting back with regard to the methodology, that's what I want to focus on. How and what happened to people to bring somebody out of nowhere and invest so much hope, so much desire, so much trust into this person who had not earned it, had not suffered for it. And he rose quickly to power. And, he was barely in the Senate, a year or two or whatever it was. I mean, so this kind of hysteria, this kind of enthusiasm, we need to avoid. It doesn't matter what spectrum it is on the political spectrum. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if it's right or left. We got to avoid that kind of imbalanced and unsober enthusiasm for personalities and look hard at the concrete reality of people on the ground. And then, of course, always in the big picture of the alpha and the omega, the process of history. Why are we doing week after week after week of the book of Revelation under the tutelage of Elder Athanasius? Why do we do that? Well, precisely because we all need to go deeply into the perception and mind and the outlook of the church fathers on these very important spiritual principles and criteria, so that then we have those within us. They've been now implanted within us. And so when these events happen, which are not going to be explainable because of, verse 16 or chapter 16, verse 5 of Revelation. That's not how it works. It's not going to be that kind of one-to-one application, but you're going to acquire the mind, and you're going to have the criteria and ability to hopefully discern and see not just what they're saying or what they're doing, but how they're doing it, right? So how Obama came to power, not so much who Obama was he, that's secondary. How he came to power was very startling and very instructive of the lack of proper, sober Christian outlook. Same thing could be applied today. We should not get excited about Mr. Trump and go crazy. We can certainly make, simple judgments about a politician. Is he doing the right thing? Is he sincere? We can do all that. That's fine, and we can come to some conclusions. And I think there's plenty of conclusions to come to watch. I mean, on a basic human level, to see someone who almost got killed and be courageous, or to see someone endure so much vitriol and anger and hatred, or to endure so much legal persecution. All of that is, on a human level, it's admirable. One can certainly assess that in a positive way. But that is one thing, and then it's a very different thing if we're talking about actually someone who is inspired by God, has an Orthodox or Christian outlook. That's a very different thing, right? The depth of the spiritual life, the way of Christ, that is so frankly foreign to most people who call themselves Christian today. The spiritual discernment that characterizes the serious and deep Christian is very rare today. So let's make sure we don't get carried away and excited on a human level and lose track of the big picture and the way of Christ, and keep that in mind.